Oh, I was just sitting outside and I just realized what I told Sean. I like the dead branches the most. Not the most, but they are scaffolding for the living. Well, and when you think about it, that soul rebirth, and you know what you said about basil and lilac. Even you took care of them even in winter. Well, you already got those cards, so you're like, which one? You know, and you know which ones want their secrets kept. Well, they both do. Well, in many ways, I already know that genealogy is just naming, you know. So if we're all from the same family, you know, well, and that makes sense why the Mormon, why they were keeping track of everyone, and why the United States was doing cord blood sampling, you know. Maybe they were looking for an aberrancy or a marker, which is awfully strange. You said in many ways, Stephen, you don't even need to you don't need to look at the cards, they're just pretty. I like them though, they are pretty. Well, can you imagine if each one of them was, and you cut them earlier? Well, and you said, well, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Most times you don't, because you're shuffling them. And then either way, it's like, and that doesn't surprise you either. It's kind of what you said about the other ones. That guy might as well be playing racquetball or tennis. And you know what happens when you play tennis by yourself. Well, they shoot the balls at you with those machines for practice. And it's not like you need practice. I mean, you could just walk outside. Well, and you said where you were going today. I know, right? Look at him. He's like, Well, and I think it was interesting what you wrote about that disconnect. And in many ways, you're right. I wonder if other people think about that the disconnect between their soul expression and their physical expression. Many times, you wake up and you're just like, "This is how I am. This is what you get." But you feel comfortable in like dress clothes or just holy jeans or anything really. I mean, you wear socks and sandals with those Nike sandals. And people always made fun of you for wearing black socks with shorts. Well, it's because you didn't own any white socks. Weird, huh? And who cares? Oh, well, there was the dress code that you were supposed to like. Oh, look at me. I'm like, and you tried that. Well, you did do that. But you bought stuff that was on sale. You were like, are you kidding? And then honestly, you didn't wear it most of the time. Just when you were going out to like a play or out with. And that thing about the play you saw was really good, what you said. Why the period pieces. Because they were out of character. Why? It's because it was cheaper to do it that way. And it meant something. And you thought you knew what it meant. Like you said, oh, those look like madmen telling a queen what to do. And you know what that meant, too. And then really, who was telling who? Think about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf again. What were they saying in that, and why? Was that a Christmas movie of all things? Well, you know why? Because it was like your family. And not just the drinking. It's like, guess who's coming to stay for the weekend? You know? Or move in with you. And Sean rationalizes behavior too. Imagine that, right? Well, and you're sort of beyond that rationalization now. You're just like, you said it the other night. And you're right. You said you would go to the Holy Land when they're done fighting. And you know what that means, too. Or when their doors open, who would be terrified of them? I wonder why some of the things that you watch upset you. Well, and admit it, you wore that Adolf Hitler shirt, and then when you realized you gave it to that Holocaust class, but looking at it from an outside perspective might have looked like something else. Well, I guess they didn't know that. And you were right. You said when you had shaved hair and you wore those high boots with those joggers and that leather trench coat, you did kind of look like a Nazi. But it wasn't, you weren't doing that. Well, it also looked like you were a horse rider. And you were right. Think about that. Well, you can almost think of that in any sense of the word. Put two people who are supposed to be enemies together and see how they get along. Good and evil, the Nazis and the Jews and the Palestinians, Russia and the United States, Cuba and the United States. Except I don't think the people of Cuba hate the United States. You know who it is that hates each other. Oh, right, and them too. Except they somehow came, what? Those scars will last forever, though. And they were working on building some bridges in that country that you're talking about, not saying. Not easy work for them either. Well, there was a lot of fear and a lot of hatred and animosity. And then they were forced to be together. But that's not always a bad thing. I mean, in nature, sometimes you think about trees that grow together. Well, and just think about it. It's not like they can just get up and reroot somewhere else. And they do, in a way. Or one tree overshadows the other. And that's not even the half of it. And you're like, keep it. You know? More of that destruction of the self, that temple. Just like, well, you said it too. Wait till they find out that what they've been looking for in the place where you were thinking in your mind, what has been right in front of them, or in a place that they've already discovered just right behind the wall. It's kind of crazy. Well, you can say that about some Native American people or some Indian tribes within America. I don't even know what to call them anymore. Well, you can call them brothers and sisters. Like you could call everybody brothers and sisters, and mother and father, and son and daughter. But so could everybody else. And that tears down walls too. Remember when I watched it on the news when they tore down the Berlin Wall? there was still a wall there. And it took a little bit of time before people went. And even like Minneapolis and St. Paul, there's a river there. Well, and you saw what it looked like on the map. Exactly. It looked like this. Yeah, I saw that too. And you know, when I was talking about the surface tension and things that go, well, and what are bobbers? I know, and that's how you like to fish. It's just, and it wasn't about fishing at all. Well, you saw yourself throwing those nets out there too. You know, I mean, just strange. And you know that you could just keep going like this. And where do you get off? Where do I get off? Like, right, the gall of Stephen Philip Lindquist. Okay? How dare you destroy our belief in everything we hold? And how dare you, Stephen Philip Lindquist, come in here with these ideas that we do not want to hear? Because we want to be protected in ourself, in our lives, and be comfortable. It's better to believe a lie sometimes than it is the truth, right? Well, you can imagine how many times some Buddhist texts have been rewritten. Yeah, and those nuns, Pimas. You know what I mean? But smart. You know who else was sending energy into the atmosphere? There were other people praying for kind of the same thing. Well, enlightenment and peace. And that's not easy, especially when a lot of people are slaves to their own lies or lives. I know, right? Well, and that's it too. Love. Well, you can do that love and think, I see it. Well, and then you would say, well, you're a slave to the computer, but I'm doing self work. Oh, right, but some people don't want you to. Isn't that how you destroyed your relationship with Tara? Is doing so much work for self now? Well, it's different. My physical kids aren't here, are they? Well, I'm more concerned about the inner aspects, and I will continue to send you 2 messages. In many ways, there's a couple secrets hidden. Well, there's several secrets hidden, more than that, hidden around the world. Well, and it's not like they could have been all entrusted to one group. Or one circle. You know what would happen if one circle had them all? Too much power. And then, of course, Stephen, you said it. You would watch it all fall to build something new so I could do it again. I mean, that's kind of how it goes. And that scaffolding of dead branches for the living are growing. So true. And it's beautiful to see dead branches in trees because they serve a purpose. Well, and you know what happens in the South, why they die. Well, the weight of some of that moss. And then are they dead? Not really. But then are the dead ever really dead? Well, and if you think about soul work, and the souls that are, well, not loose so much as they attach, like piggyback sometimes. And even in, well, you said that. You talked about energy being energy, and this table might as well be John Q. Public, or, you know, on some level. And it was funny when you said, what isn't organic on the earth? Well, go ask that guy. Well, and that would hurt vegetarians too. Oh, my broccoli that I'm eating is part of a, you know, and yeah, them too destroy their little lives. The vegans, if they had to come to terms with everything that they ate was of in itself an animal, what would they eat? And what would happen to organic food places that are, you know, do you see how it's so destructive? Well, and then energy in the raw state of the, talk about destructive, or talk about empty. Energy with no form to take physical. Beautiful and destructive in the physical. I mean, you can look at, well, take that for instance, take a movie, you know, and then think about that. And then there you go again. So really, does knowledge help in any way? Or does being blind to all that protect people? And you think that having your people's eyes open to the truth would help. What? Say things were up here, they would go like this. And then they would go. And then they would go, well, you know what that looks like. Yeah. Like an EKG tracing. Or waves from brain waves. Well, and you could probably name them too. Well, and you can see development inside a fetus. I mean, in a fetus and like inside the womb, you could see it dividing. And like that one day you stopped yourself. You were like looking at it and you were like, oh, even though you've seen it many times. And it's not, it's beautiful. And then even the fact that if one said, well, if all goodness was around, then what? Or if all darkness or all chaos was around, would there be chaos? Would there be beauty in just utter chaos? Well, it would be organized. I mean, even nature is organized. You know, squirrels take care of, you know what I mean? They clean up their yard. And do you see? And the leaves create compost. Well, and insulation. And pine needles are so good for that. Well, it's like a fur coat on the ground for winter. And talk about vanity. But it's beautiful. I know, right? You just saw that. But it's a gesture. Well, and an acceptance, too, of, yeah. And they told you outside again that Mary Colson saw all your records. Well, she knew some of it already. I mean, they talked about it in Wilmer. Of course, a lot of people didn't know the extent to it. Well, and some of them were small-minded. Well, Wilmer was small-minded. Isn't it funny how Grandma and Auntie didn't go to the same church? Well, what you said earlier about your grandma's anger. Think about that. Think about why Grandma Frances loved you. And you don't care. Well, and the truth doesn't matter. I mean, not so much as what can you do about it? Because you can't go back and change it. Well, you can bring light to it in the future or now, but you can't go back and like undo it because there's nothing to be undone. Remember, the past is yesterday. or ayer. It's in the wind. And it's mañana, today, and este dia. I mean, it's just like really strange. And yeah, you have said that before. Many times. So if people are stuck in the past, in their own temples, in their own... Sometimes it takes a catalyst to move them forward, or to destroy what they believed, and then start something new. And that's a lot of broken lives and beliefs. And you would do it again. You know, just think about it. I mean, another reincarnation, and you would be like, I would do it again. I would remember. And you've said that before. Oh no, my memory is pretty... I will remember. And you know, at one time you thought that people wanted you to kill yourself. Well, you said you'd be worse dead. Well, think about that. Where would you go? Everywhere. And you know about the resurrection story. Well, you know of it in many different ways. It's not so much about a physical body being resurrected, but a soul and the destruction of belief being resurrected into a new something beautiful. And you would think if people are listening to you, you'd be like, that's fine, listen, but then go destroy yourself in a way that you forget about everything that I said. See? So, and then put it inside of you, and then be like, oh, now it's my responsibility. Thanks. Well, and until people realize that coming together and bringing new ideas together, well, they're going to keep destroying each other. Except now, maybe if they know that they're killing their brothers and their sisters and their moms and their dads and their sons and daughters. Well, and their spirits and nature. Think about all the dead in some of the wars. It's like a soup of souls. Just like this, stirring around a dead field. Where do they go? Well, a lot of them went into the earth. Or into the atmosphere. That energy then, I mean, you're just breathing them in. Think about that, about spirit. You go outside and you are breathing in the energy of dead life forms. Energy transformed. It doesn't bother me. I know I'm like disconnected with my facial expressions. I'm more petrified for what other people are going to think about that. That's why they said, and that picture was a good thing, they had gas masks on. Not because of a bomb went off, because somebody brought light to the fact that you know? But it's true. Then the youth do change. Well, you bring them knowledge, and you know what young people do? The older people are like, but young people, they transform it into something powerful and beautiful. And then the next generation comes along. I mean, it's the climbing the stairs to jump off. And it's done with love. Well, and some spite, I'll show you. My way will be better. And that's beautiful. It does disturb some balance, though. It does. But that's the other thing about it. Like I said, those who have done it in the past sometimes have the biggest criticism while they're going up the stairs. Because they're like, well, we've already been up there. And it's like, now, oh, isn't that cute? Look at him. Yeah, and they jump off with you. And then somebody else. Well, and then sometimes you said it takes a whole bunch of people to go down to get them to go up. That's that whole. Yes, and you know what? Right now, if there wasn't the need for oil, do you know how many other sources of energy, right? But why do we keep it? And when we've tried in the past to change it, well, exactly what you said before, where would they go? Well, now that the United States has got oil in it, think about it. And there was something about the past that when you didn't have all the options. I mean, and people literally didn't drive. Well, because they didn't need to. Well, in some countries, things are a little bit smaller and on purpose so they can walk. And if you needed to go somewhere, you only took the car to go on long journeys or the train. Yeah, in many ways, I said, I would have hauled Sabea and me around on the public bus or a train so they could get used to it. He's so cute. Look at. I know. I kind of gotta. He probably smells it. I can't wait. Stop doing. And that's the other thing. Well, they used to use. You know. Well, they use animals sometimes to smell out disease, fungus, or fungi. But it's true. I mean, some animals were trained to, like cancer dogs or other dogs, well, and cats too. Sometimes I think they're like, or they hit me in the nose and they're like, oh, I know you know. I'm like, leave me alone. Well, and sometimes you're walking outside and you get hit by a branch. Well, you're thinking about something, it's like, oh, sorry. It's silly. But you knew that too. Well, and you rarely got poked with roses when you took care of them. Well, except a couple times when you grabbed them like that. But you could, you know how to. You took care of them so carefully. I mean, and you didn't mind getting scratched up by them because you're like, it's just a skin. It's just a surface scratch. It was more important to make them look pretty. You know. Then again, that's outward appearance. But I think they appreciated it. Well, you know why? It brought bees. I, and then well, and sometimes the birds got the bees, and see, but it's such a delicate balance. Well, even in like the bees' honeycombs and stuff, there were other things living there, living organisms within the honey. You know. Well, and it's all so important. I know, you just hours out there. I can just and even the petunias, you would like deadhead them so they could grow again. Even though that was not the easiest job, but rewarding. Well, in many ways, you know what that else that refers to. Deadheading things. Well, it's the part of the living organism that is dead or spent, and you were helping it make room for new growth. Well, it takes a gardener or a child. And even then, you didn't mind if Savea and Nia picked the flowers. You were like, so yeah, in many ways, maybe they did get hurt and all of that by not knowing the truth. And then their inner anger, and maybe directed at you, Stephen. Often kids displace, they blame their parents, like you did with your dad, but then you knew something else. And then you forgave him because you had perspective. And he didn't even talk to you about it. You just kind of were like, oh, I see. You called him a coward. Well, and there might have been more behind that. I mean, not I know, right? I'm not sure what more work needs to be done. Well, in many ways, you didn't even have to do any of this. Not for you. What would that have caused? Well, pretty much. There's a good reason they say that. And there, well, and that's, well, in many ways, that throwing the baby out with the bathwater meant something else. And the ladies know what it means, or women. Well, that's because they used to do it to other women without their permission. Well, and when we worked in the hospital, our when I worked in the hospital, it was common practice to save the mother first. I said this before in a video, but the baby tries to kill the mom. So it's a fight. But the hospital viewed the mom's life, well, a lot of times you had to. And that's kind of, well, that's the thing about abortion. Women who were forced to have children from rape, some of them were able to like move past that, but a lot of them were abusive to their children or cold. And I just think about that. And then, and the pro-lifers, I argued with Sean, the other day. Pro-lifers would accuse women of killing unborn babies, and yet they wanted to go to war with everyone and kill people. And restrict people's rights. Well, I wonder why. Well, a lot of it was because they had wrong ideas about what. Well, come on now. We don't have to even beat around the bush here. They had wrong ideas about the nature of their Christ being, or just the nature of nature, or nurture. Considering where they came from and what practices brought them into life. I mean, how would you like that? What if they were holding on to that soul guilt from past things that they did? And that was externalized in hatred. Right? I just looked at that again and I was like, well, in many ways, they've been warned. I mean, people have been warned. What? And even other people or spirits. Can you imagine, though? I mean, just say one spirit. But what if there were divisions within that one spirit? I mean, the knowledge of all beings in one spirit must be taxing. And it's not as if, well, you do kind of think that way sometimes, don't you? Like there's this holding tank. Yeah, the lottery system. Here you go. A spirit tag. You get like, I suppose in some ways, spirits, you know, maybe there's spirit work that needs to be done. One, if the physical world and the spirit world were on the same page, wow, what could be done then? And then get rid of those ideas of right and wrong. I mean, then that common good theme comes out. Or that common ground, right? I said I wouldn't go there. I already know too many people there. And it's not like I haven't been there before. And maybe some common ground needs to be shaken up. Well, and I can see where some would want that in the common ground. Uh-huh. I know you're like, who are you looking at? Well, and some might think it's the buildings or happiness in the window with a crow's feather on it, or that harvest wreath that I bound circles to. You know, or I could be looking at you, Stephen, Philip Lindquist. Well, in some ways, that movie about the trees plaguing people isn't so much about physical death as it is about whispering secrets, or bringing new ideas in life. Hold on. He just does what he wants. Sometimes he just sits there and looks at me, or then he goes. He's a multifaceted kitty. Well, hold on. I know. Gosh, how long have I been? Well, and I thought, Sean's like, well, when are you going to start looking for work? looking. Well, and I have work. There's a little bit of work left to be done. But you know what's interesting too about like some leaders? Well, it's not really interesting because then you're like, well, where did they go? Right? It's kind of like their hunt for Red October in a way. I mean, not for not for that, but just thinking about that. Well, I'm still thinking about that cat that flew out of that window. It didn't fall, or it didn't fly. It just plummeted. What? Oh, he's got an eye booger. I like to get those. Well, it's hard if Hugo doesn't lick them out, then it's hard to, you can only use your paws to do so much. No, I felt so bad for him when he got the garlic vinegar from the refrigerator pickles. That's got to get in your tongue. It's like when you give dogs peanut butter. Well, and really the truth about cats and dogs, you want to talk about something crazy, dogs are really loyal. When they can be trained to listen. And cats listen. They just walk around like they own the place. Well, they do. And but you're right. You get a pet, like, or not a pet, but a companion, and it's like, I order you to take care of me, and I'll do my best to take care of you. And if you don't, well, I'm going to sit on the carpet. Well, same thing with the garden. If you take care of me, I'll be beautiful for you. But if you don't, everything's going to die. Oh, and you brought it right back to that same point. Well, rebirth, or the destruction of a temple. Maddening, isn't it? Well, and you could spend your whole lifetime walking around going, okay, now this coffee, well, it's empty. I want another cup, but I want a different kind. Or, uh-oh, I can't put tea in it now because it's got coffee resin all over it, and it'll wreck. Well, you can't add mint tea to this now. No. Well, you could. See what I mean? That's kind of what's nice about just cooking and having recipes is that there's a there's a there's a guide, and then you, from experience, you go, no, uh, yeah, but only this much, and I'm gonna use yogurt instead of you know, or instead of green chilies, I'm gonna use red ones from my freezer, and cross off coriander. I'm gonna use. Well, and if you think about a genetic makeup and what that means, I mean, on some level, what would make the most sense. You said it before yourself. Well, sort of materials that could live off the energy of the sun, that could absorb light into their skin, transform that into energy, and still maintain physical, spirit, and body. In many ways, your body does that with some vitamin D. Well, you think about that, like little leaf collectors, like trees. And then even when the sun isn't there, they've stored up enough energy in forms of what? Well, think about that. They know. It's kind of weird, like, if all of the disciplines got together, that you call disciplines, but everything is so separate. Well, and a lot of times you need to teach children like that, unless you took a new approach and said everything is so interconnected. That would take some really brave people, like visionaries or light bringers. Well, they would have to be willing to destroy their own beliefs and then realize that they would have to make room for new ones. You can't have that. And that's the thing. Well, that's the beauty of it, too. And it's destructive. I got kitty hair. Well, and that's kind of why you don't mind about if Tara would have done anything. Because you see the destruction and the beauty in destroying someone. And you don't want to destroy her. You said she'll do that herself. Well, and you would let your own children destroy each other or themselves. I mean, granted, I usually let them play and do whatever they wanted. And I did back Tara up, well, because she was taking care of them when you were in treatment. But if they were adults now, I'd be like, Mia, start destroying your thought process so you can build something up again that's beautiful. I would say the same to Savea. Well, and usually what happens when you do that, when you destroy your inner temple, is that you're more receptive. Sometimes you think, why didn't I just stay in silence? Why didn't I just keep myself locked in that room? Good question. But it's too late. Oh, you were going to say the cat's out of the bag. Well, in many ways, you knew how they got. It doesn't even matter. But it would have taken. It was an easy script to get into your computer, and you even wondered if, when the internet connection said it was on, you wondered if it was off, or if it was just a shadow shell. You saw it yourself, Stephen. How everything was cloned and being brought. Damning, isn't it? And you always wondered why they always came up as Apple scripts, you know. And you did try to mess. You did break it a couple times. I know you could do it now. That one guy at the Apple store, don't mess with things, and you were like, no. And you still did. No. Oh, and in many ways, there's no need to go into your other computer anymore. Well, that thing's been like, I was thinking the same thing. Well, and then you think of all the times too where like the rest of souls. Like, is there a rest period for them, or is our souls' works never done? I mean, you think about just energy and spirit matter. Then you're like, is that ever done? And then you stop thinking about good and bad and beauty and destruction, and you just think, whatever. And in many ways, if there was a secret society that wanted like knowledge of, just talking about it would destroy them. Maybe that's what they want, their own destruction. Well, think about keeping knowledge for so long. I mean, you almost become a prisoner to it. Well, you become a prisoner to the lies you create to shield it. And you did that, Stephen. Yeah. Well, a lot of times because it was going to hurt people. And you, well, you did think a lot more about even your own family. You thought, well, I would, even though you said it yourself, you and Margie, you could tell her to fuck off and call her 5 minutes later. Well, the same with Chrissy and Ricky. You do it all the time. You guys learned how to deal with things differently, and not saying that that was right, but it was like things were building up to a head, and you were like, fuck off, jump off the cliff. And then you'd be like, uh, oh yeah, I understood. Okay. I mean, crazy. And you know, many ways, that's how a lot of abused kids are. Well, and adults, they're explosive, and then they're like, oh, I love you. Or you can think themselves too, then like that sadomasochist thing and just put it on an inward level. Oh, I'm going to hurt myself. Oh, I want to be hurt. And then, on top of that, I want to show people how I'm hurt to prove that I'm suffering. Except that's not why you're doing it. It's hard to see that reflection, isn't it? It's kind of like, it's weird. Like, do you see the reflection in my glasses now? Or, what was it? Well, in many ways, too, you think about directors or writers, and they're writing their secret pains into scripts. And then usually they're like, oh, it was just a story I was working on, you know? A lot of times it's disguised. Well, that story about the yellow wallpaper, it was all about control of this. Well, and it was about psychology and about demons and maybe about breaking free of the mind, the trap of the mind, and the trap of other people telling you what to do in your life. I mean, you can apply that to it. Not saying that like, oh, everybody do whatever you want, but in some ways, there's even in anarchy, there's order. Is that crazy to think that? Who's organizing anarchy? And you're like, well, what do you mean? Well, who sets it up? Oh, let's be chaotic. Oh, you got a plan for that? People would ask that because they want somebody to follow. It's like, you think about those flash mobs, it's kind of the same thing. They show up here. Oh, okay. you know, we'll do something spontaneous. Oh, yeah. Sounds good. I mean, it's. So. Well, and then there's that whole argument about technology. Are you just a slave to that? Yeah. But you're a slave to nature, a slave to breathing. In some ways, you're a slave to your spirit, too. I mean, sometimes when spirit decides to leave you, it's just like, you know, when I wrote that in that blog about existence really is the cause of suffering. Well, because we give it a word, we give it a name. Don't say that. But if you think about it, well, and then outside of that, then what is there? And that's when you're like floating on your own. Well, or you get together with people and like, what is there? What is there outside of existence? I mean, that's a keep you up all night question, just like that is their language, our communication, our thought, really. Well, I would say that would be a good thing for like school to look at is like who are these people that we're doing. And then the other thing too about art, people are like, well, I'm influenced by this artist. Well, then are you copying art? It's a tricky thing. Then it begs the question, should I just listen to no one? And then what's the point of all this? And you're right back at the beginning. Well, you don't even know if anybody's listening. But it's interesting to think that, then do I shut everything off? Well, and then you shut down global communication. I mean, that's really it. Then you become isolationists. So then you're up against another problem. How would you communicate with people in Europe or in a different world if you shut down communications? It's kind of like, now what? It's anarchy and somebody's organizing it. No. It does make you think, though, like, then what's the purpose of life? Well, it's to go through those steps, you know, and to fall sometimes, and to love, and to be hurt, and to find peace, and maybe fight sometimes. But, I mean, if then you have the knowledge that you're fighting your brothers and sisters in your own family, then that's choice. I mean, if people can pull guns on their own, on their neighbor, then they might as well just, you know, and that's insanity. But it's been done before. Well, think about this. What if your mother, what if you had to kill your half brother? I mean, think about that. And you grew up with them your whole life. You wouldn't do it. But many people had to. Well, that's because either one parent was from one area or one ethnicity and the other wasn't. But they were brothers and sisters. I know, and I keep going back to that Israel and Palestine thing. Well, and it it's really damning on Israel. Well, and Christians too. Because they created their own monster. Now they have to know it. As if they should have learned. And oh, even some prominent leaders in the Jewish community were like, you know what they said. I wonder what they're doing. Probably are banging their head against a wall. But that's what it is sometimes, talking about religion. Until people reach the level of like spirit or spirituality, then people are just banging their heads against lies that they want to stay in. Right? I wrote, I'm a fool for who volunteers to be hurt in things that other people are responsible for. And yet here I am. Well, and two, also, in in anarchy, do you know who the first people that would be put to blame would be? Well, the people that protected them from lies. Not protected them from lies, but with lies. They'd be like, they're to blame. But then they're your brothers and sisters. And I don't really care who's to blame. I'd rather just put the stuff on the table and say, all right now, look around. You've been killing you and you and you and you and you and your brother, sister, man, woman, child. And who butchers a 4-year-old? A 4-year-old. You know? And granted, if there was no war, something else would cause population control. I mean, I could just. So, war is a disease, you know? Ooh, let's get off that roller coaster. Ooh, wee, you know? Yay! It's a challenge. When I do challenge people to destroy their own inner beliefs and try to come up with something beautiful. Well, I was looking outside and I was thinking, well, nature already knows. It does it all the time. It sheds off layers. And some people just don't see it. And it destroys there I go again, see, it destroys the weak. But it doesn't lie about it. There's no hiding nature. I mean, there's no lies in it. It will just, if there's going to be a fire, it'll like, and the wind helps it. It's like, here we go. There goes the whole mountainside. You know, I mean, really. Well, that's because it realizes that something will be born of that. And it's usually new things. So you could see why I would say I could watch 1,000,000,000 people die in their inner temples and then be reborn. Or reborn. I was going to say rebirth. I guess rebirth is a better word for it. Well, in many ways, that's why I thought about baptism. That it's hard to be baptized when you're a baby. Well, when you're an adult thinking about it, because you're like, I didn't sign up for that. Well, and then you don't hold belief in it, so many times those things that happen that mean the most are things that you do when you're an adult. Because then you can really give your spirit to it. I mean, anybody can grow up in a church and go to church on Sunday and go through rote spiritual or religious practices and cross their heads or put dots on their forehead or triangle anything. I can do that. I do. I go to different religious things, but I actually go there with like and take communion because I think it's a courtesy and a gesture to show respect and that I'm there. And some people don't. They're like, oh, I refuse that. Or at any different celebration than but to bring your spirit to somebody else's celebration, and not only in the physical body, but just like I'm accepting their. I don't know. Maybe that's overreaching. When you do think that sometimes, well, you know, that's probably why you were quiet about your beliefs so much, because you're like, why reach out to people when they're just so sheltered in their lives or their belief, even their belief in your life, Stephen? Like they believe that just because you were a professional nurse and you spoke and you knew what you were doing, that didn't mean they didn't think you had problems. Or maybe they thought you had problems and they didn't realize what it was. Well, and I guess many of the same problems you had, you created yourself. When being so secretive, and then look what happened. They destroyed you. And then you destroy yourself again by going through this is really why, because you don't mind, or listen, or sit in silence like you're told to. Anyway. One, I guess there's reasons you've been kicked out of things for questioning. And I wonder about some of those essays, remember from World Religion? When you were like, this is not what they meant in there, and you're like, I don't understand what I'm reading because it seems so far-fetched from what you. Well, and you know that when they were doing human sacrifice, it wasn't really a sacrifice. Well, it did turn into one, like against people's will, but originally people were like, sign me up, you know? And they were. It was an honor and a blessing. Well, they thought they were contributing their souls to a greater work. Well, and that's in those, you know where. And that's why, like, South American Indians were like, here, just take the gold. But they wanted more and more and more. Well, and then disease. I, uh, oh, I know, right? I know, and you think that too. Like, I could just lock myself in that room over there and come out to eat and go back in there. But, you won't do that. I know, it's like she's telling you stuff like, just let him have it. Oh, there's a nice heart there. Oh, it's cute. And a star. It's cute. That was so nice of her, wasn't it? It was like a good job, honey. But um, it's not easy. It's not easy thinking that it's not easy thinking how much destruction that could cause. It's beautiful to think how much beauty and how much growth that could cause, though. That's like, wow. There would be a lot. There would be a lot of guilt and shame and bad blood, and that would take some really strong healers and nature and calling on spirits to help. And some strong people. People that would walk with their spirits. That's, I was going to say that's all she wrote. I'm sure she's got more. Well, you could see them too, couldn't you? Like calling off Congress for a while, Parliament, the houses, and sitting down and going home and talking to their families, going, what have we been doing? Well, and people that are, well, I was going to say people who are considered terrorists used to be freedom fighters or revolutionaries. It's funny how those things have a way of turning around again on themselves. Or the underground. It's all part of that cycle of destruction and rebirth. And I guess if people aren't ready for that, or if they want something better, with the knowledge that it'll change in time for good. or force difference, I would think that it would be about time. Yeah, and in many ways, that's another police state. Who's going to watch them get better? Or, I mean, who's going to watch them, like, well, and many times farmers know that secret. You have to plant the seeds in them of new ideas, and sometimes, like parents do, you put those seeds in their minds, and then you watch your ideas grow, and some ideas don't make it, and they will. And anybody who's planted flowers from seeds knows that some of them don't make it. But at least you put effort into it. And maybe you're right. I mean, I think, I am right about that. About your mother, Savannah and Mia. She might need you guys, you two, more than I do. Well, for one, I know that you'll never be far from me, from my heart, until she learns how to, like, well, I'm not even going to say that anymore. That's not even important. But I'm right. She may need you more. And that's what fathers can do too, and parents can do, is like, wow. See how I gave life to you? And I'm willing to destroy myself, my own world, to let somebody else love again, who needs it more. So, well, I'm going to continue to send you messages. And I know. I heard them say that the other night. What's hard about that is, if you heard that, would you stop? Well, you can't control everything. And you know that you would let that happen just to see her pick it up. And that's not being selfish. That's like letting somebody go on their journey. And that's ugly too. Just that knowledge that you would do that. Well, you could kill her and take your kids. But you wouldn't do that. But that's the same thing sometimes. It's crazy. Especially since you've got a trial in like 6 days. And the judge won't call you back. And you already know what you're going to do. So whose trial is it? And it's not as if you're even hurt anymore in it, Stephen, because you're not. You know? And I think you know who the ones that are hurting it. Well, the ones who caused it. Well, and Savannah and Mia. Just like you said it would be. And you would let them feel pain for that. Because it wouldn't be of your making. You said that you would have gladly shared with Tara your entire life if she just would have asked you. She didn't want to know. Oh, until they gave it to her. And then guess what? Curiosity got her, and she read it. And how do you think that feels? That's a good question, isn't it?